Okay, and you can start whenever you're ready. Oh, I don't know if we can hear you, Tamara, if you're talking. I'm just thinking if you go to the left side of your screen down by the little microphone at the very bottom where you can turn your audio on and off, if you click on the up arrow, you can make sure that you've selected the correct microphone.
So let me again. My name is Tamara Supian. I'll be going over my experience. This is my agenda for tonight. No, I'm sorry. So I'll go over my introduction. I'll talk briefly about my PPE site, the department that I worked in, my excavation, the role that was the most interesting to me, and I'll go over the project along with my challenges that I had, and then end with my conclusion. So for my intro, my name is Tamara Supian. I'm a senior here, and I'm be graduating in the spring. Very much looking forward to graduating. Presently, I work at St. Joseph's Hospital where I did my practicum. I'm an release information tech. I've been in that position for 4 months. The purpose of this is to share my experience with everyone. I was able to observe last Tuesday, and it was interesting to me to see the different sites that people visit where we're so spread out over the country. A little bit about my practicum site. My hospital is St. Joseph's Hospital. It's a Catholic community hospital in Nashua, New Hampshire. Presently, there's a 208 bed facility. At the end of last year, though, we had to bring in more beds with the flu epidemic that we had. So they offer around-the-clock emergency and trauma services, specialized treatments with cardiovascular. They have cardiac rehab, diabetes, breast care center, and also a cancer center. They work with an extensive network of physicians where in release information we take care of all of our physicians' offices also. So their mission as a Catholic hospital is to promote health and care for the whole person. So they offer spiritual care. The Heritage, it was founded by Monsignor Henry Millet, the Grey Nuns, back in 1908. They brought in the hospital. The French nuns came down for the Canadian community of Nashua. And their main goal was mission, and that's something that strikes a chord with me now, that they still have an extensive mission support system in their hospital. They have a community and also an employee food pantry. So they have 12 different mission drives throughout the year. So the hymn department I worked in, it's a little bit different because now Covenant Health bought out St. Joseph's and also 2 other hospitals in Maine. There's a St. Joseph's in Bangor, Maine, and also St. Mary's in Lewiston, Maine. So up top here we have Carolyn, she's the VP, and that's of Covenant. Renee is the Director of Health Information Management for the whole Covenant system. Marianne Carboni is the HIM manager of St. Joseph's Hospital, so she is one of my direct supervisors. Under her, we have Maureen Austin. She's the systems coordinator and also the ROI coordinator. We have 2 full-time ROI techs, an auditor, and a part-time tech. We do, their charts are hybrid right now, so they have a prep scan and index department. So Robin's the lead, and this is where I originated last year in November. This is where I started on the ground floor. So now they have 3 full-time techs, and then they have 2 analysts. These are all at St. Joseph's. Jacinth is our transcription supervisor. Marie takes care of the MPI and forms. Then over in the coding department, Laura, she's the coding manager of the whole Covenant team. Judy is our coding educator on site at St. Joseph's, and Carol is the outpatient coding supervisor for Covenant, but she's home based in our hospital. And altogether, they have 14 coders on site. So for my exploration, I chose Carol. She holds an RHIA, a CPC, and COC. She has 18 years of coding experience, 10 being at St. Joseph's, and she just recently was hired for the outpatient coding supervisor of all 3 hospitals. Her job was very interesting to me because I have an interest in the coding aspect of the HIM, and one of my goals after graduation and after sitting for the RHIA, I'd like to get one of my coding certificates and expand my knowledge. I don't think her role is one that I could particularly step into since I don't have that extensive of a background in coding. But it was very interesting to me to see how she telecommutes with all of her employees and how she stepped up into that role. So for my project, I was assigned to help with the M-modal implementation. The hospital's going to Epic in like 50 days. So they were using Nuance as their transcription subscription, but it expired. And with Epic coming, they chose to go with a different system just to get by for that 6-month time period. So I was part of helping to meet with appropriate users. So I met with, attended meetings between the M-modal rep via telephone. Then we had on-site meetings with the physicians, the different clinical teams from radiology, the breast care, the labs, everybody that's affected by the dictation. So we differentiated between the 2 systems. We found the little differences, and basically it was just different procedures, different phone numbers for the physicians to call in. But where they had the other system in place for so long, it was kind of hard for them to adapt. Plus, they're physicians and they're busy and they don't feel they should have to deal with dictating side of it. So we gathered feedback from the end users at the meetings. We kept track of concerns that they might have. Then also afterwards, when the implementation went through, we did a lot of troubleshooting. So I was part of the team that was assigned to field phone calls if the physicians were calling or people are having trouble in real time. And then after that, we sat together and made up training tracks. It was just kind of like a basic training guideline to distribute to the new users, because we're acquiring new physicians on a regular basis. So the methodology, we was at the meetings, we did surveys with the docs, we let them have an open-ended opportunity to write what their concerns were. We resolved technical problems with the reps. They had issues with not being able to have control how far they were rewinding when they were dictating. Then we studied all the supporting information. They gave us a huge manual that we picked through the important parts, and then we developed the tracks. So our results, we developed training tracks, and we provided also tips and fact sheets, kind of just the mainstream, how to maneuver around it quickly so they wouldn't have to try to decipher all the notes when they came across certain problems. We provided support information. Like I said, I was part of the team that field phone calls as the physicians have problems. And we had a very smooth transition hospital-wide. So part of the resources, this is one of our little cheat sheets that we first designed, not the training tracks, but this was one that we got from Immobile. They offered an in-depth training manual for us, 24-hour technical support. On the day that we implemented it, there was a rep on site to assist with that. And then our lead transcriptionist just had extra one-on-one training with the rep that day when she was on site. So some of the challenges of my PPE, I think the positive side of it, I was, where I worked there, it was easier for me to know the people that I needed to reach out to. Some of the required components were hard. I know one of the ones that they wanted me to sit with Renee. She was very busy. I mean, with 3 hospitals getting ready to switch to Epic, her timeline was very short. One of the other challenges was being treated more, not being treated as a student. I was treated more as a coworker in some situations. And I just had to gently remind them, I'm here to learn. Treat me like I don't know anything about this department, or, just dumb down what you're explaining to me. Act like I don't even know any component of it. And then one of the other ones was sometimes I felt maybe they withheld certain things from me because I know other participants, it might affect my other coworkers. But overall, I feel that I did get a lot of knowledge and information. Diane Hansen, she was our old HIM manager, or HIM director of St. Joe's, and she was on site throughout my practicum, and she was very positive, and she just is a wealth of knowledge that is willing to share with anybody who wants to listen. So the lessons I learned was, the biggest one was the amount of responsibility that our HIM director has. When you see the other side of behind the scenes of how the department meshes together, plus how they interact with the other departments of the hospital, like the IT department, the physician side of the hospital. It was really interesting to me to be able to see all that and to be a part of it. So in conclusion, I really enjoyed my experience at my PPE. It was kind of a little nerve-wracking at the beginning because it was hard to find a place for me to go, but once I was able to do it at my hospital, I felt a little bit more at ease. And I wasn't as nervous, where I know a lot of the coworkers and who my mentor would be. And it was interesting to see the different roles that they play. I mean, interact with my coworkers on a daily basis, but to be able to sit with them and to see their daily tasks that they have to do, it made me have a greater respect for them and the job that they do. And also, one of the positive things that came out of this experience for me was that my manager and the director recognized me as a potential future asset. You know, and knowing that the different components that we're learning, they're more open to know how far my education is being stretched and how informative it is. So I know that my supervisor, Maureen, told me afterwards that, you know, they had a retirement party for Diane, and Diane's like, you know, Tamara, you need to watch her because she's going to be something great, you know, and she's got potential, and I really see her being an asset to our department in the long run. So it really meant a lot to me, and I'm glad that I was able to experience this and have a greater respect for my supervisors. So that's about it.
Very good, Tamara. I thought that, so let me just back up. So your current role is release of information? Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess my question is more or less, are you still involved with some of this transcription implementation, like the post implementation stuff, or seeing as how you're still working there and around?
Well, I'm still part of the team that helps with the field the calls. One of my main roles in my position, we do answer the calls coming into the department.
Okay.
So if a physician calls and says, you know, I need help with this you know, my dictation, I lost it, you know, I can assist them in finding it.
Good. Good. So do you think that was one of the perks of doing your PPE there too, is to kind of be part of this? Because
Definitely.
would you have been a part of it had you not been doing your PPE there?
I don't feel part of the transcription, no.
Right.
Because I think they would focus on the people that already have that role in the department.
Right.
There's another girl that's one of the backup transcriptionists. So, I mean, I just like to be able to get my knowledge all over so I can be more of an asset.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, that's awesome that you got to be a part of that and continue to kind of the right place at the right time, maybe, too. So, I love your last bullet that you were recognized as a potential future asset. So, I really hope that this does lead to advancement for you within the department and for your career. So,
thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Julie and Amanda, do you guys have any questions?
I have a question. You talked about radiology with M-Modal. What do you know what software package they used? Is it like, do they dictate or do they do front end?
Do they do dictate or what?
Or the front end speech where it just appears on the screen?
They're actually doing the dictation.
Okay.
That's how they.
Is it called Fluency Flex that they're using? Do you know?
Not really sure.
Okay. We just had an implementation in December, and we have radiology where they're trying to dictate, and it's still not working properly. So I was like, oh, I wonder if they're using it.
And the one downside that we did come across was that whenever the radiology would dictate, under nuance, it would automatically fax the results out to the ordering physicians. And then once they implemented this, they realized that's not the case. So they had to hire a girl to come in and do the actual manual faxing of all the reports out. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you said that about the rewind feature too, I was like, oh, yep, we have the same issue.
Right, yeah. They didn't like that factor at all.
No, I know if you pushed it, like if they pushed the same button twice, it all of a sudden would rewind them back to the beginning, and it didn't matter if it was 5 minutes later that they pushed that same button twice. So they'd be going along and thinking they're just going to go rewind a little, and all of a sudden they're back at the beginning. Oh.
Right, yeah.
Wasn't.
Luckily, we only have another month to deal with it, so.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tamara.
Thank you.
All right. So I will, let's see. That's not, I clicked on the wrong thing. Hold on 1 second here. Okay. So I'm gonna make Julie a co-host. And Julie, hopefully you'll be able to see at the bottom the share your screen.
Okay. Am I it now? Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, okay. I think I see it.
And I don't know if, okay, there we go. I was just thinking, I don't know if Tamara needs to unshare. So it worked though. Good.
All right. I think this will work.
And you can start whenever you're ready, Julie.
Okay. All right. Well, my name's Julie Winkles, and I am here to talk about my PPE experience at Children's Minnesota. They have 2 hospitals, one in Minneapolis, one in St. Paul, and I actually spent most of my time at their Children's Business Campus, which is in Edina. So I'll go ahead and my agenda is there's an introduction to Children's, computer systems used at Children's, an HIM department overview, the career exploration component, my PPE project, my biggest challenge, a lesson learned, and a summary. So like I said, I was at the Children's Business Campus. They call it the CBC. This houses most of their HIM staff. Some of them move around from campus to campus. Some are primarily at one location or the other of St. Paul or Minneapolis. They kind of have all different setups. They're one of the largest freestanding pediatric health systems in the United States. Like I said, they have the 2 hospitals, but they also have 12 primary care clinics, 6 rehabilitation locations, and 9 specialty care clinics. And it seems like they're growing all the time. They were kind of, when I was there, talking about folding in some more branches of clinics into their system. So it's forever growing, and it's really, I think it's really neat to see, because it's like, wow, what a network, and it's amazing for these kids. They have 413 hospital beds, a level 1 trauma center for children, and they were established in 1924, which I thought was really interesting, because way before a lot of the rules and regulations that we're used to now, you know, just to think about it being established in 1924, it's like, wow. They've been taking care of kids for a long time. Some of the systems that they use there, they have the Cerner electronic health record in the hospital. Their clinics have what they call eClinical Works, or ECW. And I know they were kind of talking about maybe transferring those over to Cerner at some point. They use the 3M 360 computerized coding program, and they also have a CDI program that goes along with that. Right now they're using the Nuance transcription platform, and also the Nuance drag-in front-end speech. So some providers use the front-end speech. They kind of have the option if they'd like to do that or not. I think she said about 96% of them are transcribing, but I think, and I'm sure she said like about maybe 100 and 115 are on the front-end speech, and that kind of changes all the time because you have residents coming through there. I was in the HIM department, like I said. My mentor was Christy Lundgren, and she's the EHIM manager. It was an awesome experience. I got to observe a variety of HIM jobs, some that, I just really hadn't even really experienced before at all, like some of the registries, some of the data governance things. I'm in a really small hospital right now. So, and actually I had been at Mayo before, but we never saw those other departments. So this was really neat. I got to attend a lot of meetings with Christy. I mean, when she gets to work, she says she feels like she gets in her little race car and goes. And so I was trailing behind her. The one thing I really liked, kind of their motto, I call it their motto because I heard it so many times interviewing different people, is like, we are doing this for our kids. And I just felt so good about that. Like, I just felt, even though it's in the background, everybody has that in their mind that we're doing this for the kids. And they even have like murals of kids on the wall. That's just really a neat environment to be in. The organizational chart here, Ann Teagan is their HIM director, and she has several managers, and including Christy that I was under. And then they also have added the ROI coordinator, which was a new position. And so he's kind of an offshoot of what Christy's doing. And he was a St. Scholastica alumni too. He even wore his St. Scholastica shirt one day when I was there. So I got to meet with clinic coding. Jennifer O'Connell is called their document systems manager. She's in charge of transcription. She's actually off-site. She lives in South Dakota. So that was the neat thing too, is like some people are there, some people are off-site. Some people come in once, like one day a week. Some people get to work from home one day a week. It's really a different, it just depends on the person and what works for them and what works for their position as well. So for my career exploration portion, I chose the CDI supervisor, mostly because I hadn't really experienced this position before, and it was really interesting to me. We're just starting CDI at my work, and I've kind of been working with the CDI specialist, just different documentation errors I noticed, and then I kind of tried to get her opinion. So I don't know if I fully understood everything she was trying to do. So it was really kind of neat for me to see a department that's already set up and how it flows. So Carrie Mayfield was the supervisor that I kind of shadowed a little bit. CDI is really the bridge between the clinical side and the HIM side of medicine, and I just love it because it's almost like you're solving a puzzle. To look at the pieces of the documentation and make sure, okay, is this sepsis, or should they really be explaining further what kind of pneumonia this person has? Where is this fitting in the puzzle? It was really interesting to see how you can improve documentation accuracy. And it's not only to get, like a higher payment, because sometimes it could result in a lower payment. It's to get it the documentation to be more accurate. And also, this is so important because these kids can carry this diagnosis, for a lifetime. And you don't want them to have a wrong diagnosis carried through their chart. It could affect them later. It could affect insurance. I mean, just a multitude of ways it could affect this kid. So I just thought that was kind of neat to see that, where it's not just related in dollars and cents, it's related in the accuracy of that patient's chart. I love it because I am passionate about quality, and I just had a review at my own work, and my supervisor mentioned that's where you really shine. I don't have the coding background, and it takes like 10 years of coding background or nursing background, which I don't have. So I probably wouldn't be able to do this role, but I can work closely with people who are in this role. And I just think, we can work really well together and understand each other's role. because I found it fascinating. I went to some meetings with them, and I got to attend a webinar on sepsis, and to me, it was very interesting. So I did appreciate spending time with her. And then when I had interviewed Carrie, I found out she used to be a teacher at a local college, so that was kind of neat too. And that leads me to my PPE project, which was creating a coding manual. So I was already working with Carrie on this. The goal of the project was to create this manual using OneNote, which I don't know if I'd even heard of it before, but I really didn't know how to use it. I think I had opened it on my work computer by mistake, and I was like, oh, I better get out of this because I don't know what it is. So, and then they wanted to try placing the CDI manual on OneNote to see if that would be a good way to share it with the whole department, because most of their CDI specialists work from home. So what I did, at first I had to figure out what OneNote was because I didn't know. I met with Kayla, who's an HIM analyst, and Carrie, the supervisor, and they kind of told me what they wanted. And they didn't know much about OneNote either, so they're like, we're kind of counting on you to do the research to tell us if it's even a good product, will it work? And then I did my research, and then when I had some questions about how we wanted to set it up, I did meet with Kayla and Carrie, probably 2 or 3 times just to say, hey, how do you want this? Or do you think this looks good? And then on the last day, I presented my project to the project team and gave them feedback. So my methodology was researching the OneNote program, data gathering on the internet and in the department. They had files online that I had to kind of dig through. They had some that were duplicated, and they just really wanted them in one spot and cleaned up. Some of them had notes all over them where they just wanted a clean, crisp manual for people to look at. And then I did an interview with the CDI supervisor and the HIM analyst. And then the results I found were mixed on OneNote for the manual. It was very user-friendly and had lots of great added tools in there, like clipping tools and formatting tools. It's really fun to play with. If you haven't looked at it already, I would recommend that you do that. My concerns were with the storage of information. It stores the information differently, and you can easily modify that information because it's kind of meant for people to collaborate and work together. So if someone else gets in there, they could change it. So I really felt like it could be a useful tool for them to work together, but they really need to back it up on something else besides OneNote, just in case it gets changed or deleted, because if you delete it, there's no getting it back. And I did that once when I was working through it, so I got to learn the hard way. But anyway, you can kind of see on the bottom, I posted like what the tabs look like, and I thought it actually looked very nice. And I think this could be a helpful tool too if you just wanted to take some notes on something for yourself. It's called the Digital Notebook. So if you haven't played with it, I would suggest give it a try and see if you like it. The resources I used for my project were Carrie, the CDI supervisor, Kayla, who is another St. Scholastica grad. She was the HIM analyst. Nisa Noreen is the manager above both of them. And I got to visit with her a little bit, and then she watched the project. I spent a lot of time on Microsoft.com and on OneNote.com just learning, how to do it. So that's kind of the gist of that from my project. This, Katie will appreciate. My biggest challenge was traffic because I am not a cities girl. I moved here from like the country. I was kind of in the Rochester area before this. So I'm like terrified to drive to the cities. So my biggest problem was traffic. And it took me, like right now I live about 25 miles away from my job, and it takes me 25 miles to get there. And this was about 20 miles away, and it took me 45 minutes to get there. So that was my biggest challenge. And then one day I had to drive from St. Paul to the CBC, and it took me like a long time. Like 45 minutes, and they're like, what way did you go? And I'm like, I don't know, but I made it. So That was my interesting adventure. The biggest lesson I learned was no matter how big or small your HIM department is, we all face similar issues. And that was really an eye-opener for me because I thought, okay, we're so small. It's because we're so small, we don't have all these things in place. And some of the things I asked Christy about, and she's like, oh, well, we're just looking into that. We don't really have that defined yet. And I'm like, wow, it made me feel like, oh, I guess I'm not so bad. We all kind of face the same issues. And we both had an issue with trying to gauge productivity with scanning. And I know someone else did their project on that. And I'm like, oh, I really need to look into that. I mean, it was just, to me, it was refreshing to know that just because they're big children's and they're very impressive, they don't have all the answers either. And we're all just kind of working through it together. So I appreciate that. And then my summary of my experience, it was a wonderful PPE. I mean, I truly, thoroughly enjoyed it. And I didn't know I was going to enjoy it so much when I got, before I went. I saw some new ways to do HIM tests, and I'm implementing some in my job, actually. I saw paperless faxing, which is like the most amazing thing ever. And I want to try to get that going. And people at my job are like, how are we ever going to do that? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure, but we're going to do it because how much paper, I mean, we're supposed to be paperless and we spend reams and reams and reams of paper. So I'm like, we have to at least, like, even if we could cut it half, it's just amazing. It's very, very cool. I got to see a variety of jobs, which I don't think I get to see anywhere else because they have so much. They have research and, visiting with their IRB administrator. She was so interesting. She'd been there a long time and she had other background in like the military and stuff. And it was just like everybody had such a good story. It was very interesting. It was neat to see a highly efficient teamwork because people did just work together, and I didn't see a lot of bickering and a lot of I'm not doing that, or I don't know, there wasn't the kickback. It seemed like people just kind of knew what they were doing. They did their jobs, and if they needed help, they asked, whoever, and it was a really neat example of teamwork. And I think that leads to my last point is they were doing this for the kids, and they'll do what it takes to get it done for the kids. So I was very impressed with that. And that's just my resources. So do you have any questions for me? Or?
I have a question. Did they mention, my PPE also had the Cerner with the dragon. And did the transcriptionist actually edit the dragon or their documents after they?
No, they did not. It was two separate. And all their transcriptionists were at home too. I guess I didn't mention that part.
Okay.
Yeah. They had two specified people that were dragon trainers.
Okay. Did the doctors edit, like if there were typos?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I was actually wondering the same thing as Amanda because I know before I left First Light Health System, we tried to implement the front end speech through Dragon and could not get our physicians to edit their own documents. So if they've accomplished that, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like if they weren't doing it right, they would just take it away. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, they're pretty strict, and they have, the neat thing is they have a lot of support from higher up that if they don't do the documentation, if they don't answer queries, it goes out of the HIM people's hands and into more of the compliance, and I love that. I'm actually trying to implement at my own job. I know it's not about my PPE, but since we started Dragon, kind of like a QA program for the physicians, and we have the same problem. Some of them won't correct it, and I'm like, we can't leave it like this. So I actually watched a very good webinar through AHDI if anybody needs that information, because it was through Spectrum Health, and it's a very good webinar. Or I think there's contact information for people at Spectrum Health on there too, because I think that's a new issue that's we're gonna see more and more as we need to QA the physicians if they're gonna do it.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question is do they do audits then of those physicians using front-end speech?
I don't think they do technical audits. Like they don't have the, we're starting clinician created documentation audits, but I think the coders, when the coders find it, is more kind of how it gets caught.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Did you say, are there coders on site, or are they?
There are. There's
okay.
some on site, and there's some. There's a lot at home, and I think there's some that just don't want to work at home, and there's some that'll come in like a day a week, or. It's all different kind of setups.
Okay. All right. I don't really think I have any other questions. I'm curious to know if they do end up using OneNote for their.
Oh yeah.
So I'll have to ask Christy next time I see her. And I'm so glad that you got to see. You know, so many hospitals have a mission, and you know, I don't know how to say this. I'm not trying to be like mean or anything, but you don't always see them living their mission, or maybe you hear it's more about the dollars and cents and things, or at least it maybe feels that way from time to time when you're working there. But Children's is just such an amazing place that everybody, you know, is just there for the kids, like you said, and you just feel that when you talk to them and you're around them. Whereas in a typical acute care hospital, you don't necessarily feel that you're always there for the patient. So,
and as a supervisor, I've had to remind people, if there's a patient on the other end of this, it's not about your work and their work, you know.
Right.
It gets frustrating too.
Yep. And I feel like it can feel that way, especially because we're not doing direct patient care. So in HIM, you kind of that can maybe get lost even, and maybe we feel it more that it's not so much about, you know, the patient, it's maybe more about the dollars and cents. But the fact that everybody, you know, in HIM, you know, lives the mission every day is pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, it was very neat.
Good. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So Lindsay's joined us, and I'm just sitting here thinking about the evaluation. So I'm assuming, Amanda, you've already probably evaluated Tamara and Julie.
Yep, I took notes on both, yes.
Okay, perfect. So then Tamara, I'm assuming you've done Julie. And Julie has done Tamara.
Yep.
So maybe if maybe Tamara, if you can evaluate Lindsay, and then Julie, if you can evaluate Amanda, that would be good. Okay. All right. So next up is Amanda. So I'll make Amanda the co-host, and you can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. My computer is so slow, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. And you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. So my name is Amanda Manny. I did my PPE at Lakeview Medical Center. If my next slide will come up. The purpose of this presentation is to go over my time spent at my PPE, explain my PPE project, and share my learning experiences. The agenda, the PPE site introduction and overview, the LMC, Lakeview Medical Center HIM department, the organizational chart, leadership, work design and process improvement, quality management was my exploration, and PPE presentation. So Lakeview Medical Center is located in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. It's a 40-bed nonprofit community hospital that employs 67 physicians and offers 22 specialties. Excuse me. They have a wide range of services that they offer. you know, your typical emergency surgery outpatient. They have a wonderful infusion services and chemotherapy unit, and also their women's health is amazing for birth and lactation services that they offer. They also are very proud of their joint replacement camp. They call it joint camp, where anyone with a major, you know, hip or knee replacement, it's kind of like a swing bed setup, and they get to do therapy together, all of the patients. It's kind of, they make it as fun as you can recovering from a joint replacement. So those are their biggest departments or services. Their HIM department. So when I went to my PPE, they had just begun the transition of Marshfield Clinic taking over their operations. When this building was originally built over 10 years ago, Marshfield did buy them out, but they were separate. They were under Lakeview Medical Center operations. Everything stayed the same. They were just in one building with Marshfield as the owner. Up until before my PPE, Marshfield decided they were taking over operations, as well as Marshfield was buying out a hospital in Marshfield, and they were building a hospital in Eau Claire. So there was a lot of transition going on. So the HIM department was being broken into service lines where it was no longer a HIM director above them. Transcriptionists, they had a transcription manager out of the regional office. Coders had their own manager, transcription the same, as well as release and analysis. The coders are able to work from home, as well as transcription, and the discharge analysis and scanning is in-house. There were two that were there all the time, as well as one release of information person was also in-house. The organizational chart, I decided to do it pre-Marshfield takeover just because that's where I was able to get the most information. So before, it was under the HIM director, and she had a lead, and then they had their employees, someone who does discharge analysis, transcriptionists, coders. There were 3 of them, 2 people scanning, and 1 person that handled the release of information. Leadership. So this is also going off of pre-Marshfield. The HIM director managed the entire department. She tracked productivity. She, at the time, you know, she was there for 20-some years, and she didn't feel that she needed to track their productivity so much. They were also long-time employees, but she did walk through some of the steps when setting productivity goals for transcriptionists. She would look at their current type, or how fast it would take them to type a document or lines, I believe it was. So look at their current productivity level, find some standards, and see if there were any gaps and if there was room for improvement. The same went for coding. She would see how much they were coding in a day and go off of standards and see if there was any room for improvement. She kept employees engaged with decision-making huddles. They were always involved in any changes that need to be made. She always felt this was their jobs and they knew it best. So keeping that communication open. And she was big on celebrating team successes. Nope. Like I had mentioned before, the HIM director makes sure to involve staff with all workflow and process changes, considering it's their job and they know it best and can give the best feedback. She would delegate tasks to encourage her staff to learn more, but would make sure that they understood it correctly before setting them off on new projects. She always encouraged them to ask questions whenever they needed. It was an open door, basically. And she encouraged strong and independent people that are team players and ask questions. So for quality improvement with my exploration, this one's always kind of been an interest for me. I was able to sit with an RN who's the quality improvement employee, and she runs reports specifically for like infection prevention, sepsis, and other quality indicators. She looks through reports of her patients, or the patients that had been seen for pneumonia, and she would look for surgical infections to, investigate if they stopped antibiotics in the correct time frame. During my time with her, I was actually sitting when she was giving a presentation to the Marshfield Clinic Board of Directors. So this was interesting. I got to see her along with the other facility quality improvement give presentations about where they were at with infection rates or MI patients and the time frame it took to get the right medications. And then if they hit their goal, if they were close. So they all gave their overview and steps. If they did not hit their goal, they would give steps of how they were going to try and get to that goal in the next quarter. So that was interesting to see. So my PPE project was to give a presentation about managing stress in the workplace. As you can imagine, having a bigger system taking over a smaller facility, a lot of people were stressed, fearful, not sure what the future would bring for them. So my action plan, I researched relaxation techniques, tips for embracing change, exercises, foods that would help, vitamins, meditation, and tips for leaving your work coat at the door. That's always been my favorite motto. The results. With all of the change going on, the office as well as the facility, going through the PowerPoint encouraged constructive conversation between the employees. It was really good to kind of see them break out of their stressful routines and bounce ideas off of each other, what worked for them, what didn't work. Swapping recipes even happened good foods to eat for, eating healthy. The presentation and follow-up conversation gave new ideas to staff to help manage their stress. So that was these are my references I used. Challenges of my PPE visit. Due to the merge, there were a few difficulties I encountered, which the new structure meant procedures and departments were changing and still unknown of the future structures. So it was a little difficult to find all of the managers that I needed. A lot of them were now located in Marshfield or in Eau Claire. And the employees even had very little contact with the new managers. They haven't really met each other, so it was difficult to get in touch. The HIM director was actually put into a new role, which made her unavailable for the majority of my PPE. She's had to spend quite a few days in Marshfield, so that made it tough. The lessons learned, while I was expecting a completely different outcome of my PPE, there was a lot that I learned about mergers and how they affect staff. The healthcare field is constantly changing, and small rural hospitals are becoming scarce. The facility I currently work at is a critical access and rural health clinic. And we talk about merge with Fairview all the time. So this gave more of an insight of how I can help my employees, if that does come in the future, how we can all work together to accomplish the goal that we have daily. So, yeah, and that's it. Any questions? I don't like presentations, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I don't think anybody does, Amanda. So I just kind of wanted, so everybody knows, Amanda and I had talked while she was on her PPE, because it definitely didn't go as I had planned either, for her. So I think I just wanted to say that, thank you for making the most of it, because not every student would have had the perspective or, necessarily, I mean, we talked about, being able to look at situations differently in the pre-PPE course, but to look at this up from a positive side, and that you did learn the impacts of these huge changes on staff. And you had a very non-traditional project
Yes.
as well. And I think you also made the most of that. And so just to clarify, or I guess a clarifying question for you. So when you gave that presentation, was the entire HIM department present? Is that who you delivered it to?
Yes.
Or? Okay.
Yep. It was yes. And there were 3 of them. So it was the HIM director, Deb Pykush, the director.
Okay.
She was there along with the scanners because everybody else works from home.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Amanda? Okay.
I don't.
Okay. I think you did a really good job, and again, I'm just sorry that it didn't. Everybody, I just want everybody to know. So I didn't know that this takeover was happening, and Deb didn't let me know that her role had changed and she was no longer in the position that she had held for all those years, and so that she really wouldn't be available to Amanda. And so that's kind of what transpired. But like I said, I think she made the most of it and learned some things. So you're right, though. If your organization does, go through a merger with Fairview, hopefully you'll be able to support your employees a little bit better.
Right. Yes. It's definitely given, and I've been through a merger before, and even like the CEO says that the facility I work with now, no merger is the same. And I could definitely tell that even with the one I had gone through and this one. So it was an experience. It was a good coming out of the experience. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. I do have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just didn't know if my mic was on or off. On most of your PPEs, I just was curious, were you guys delegated or had a choice on what your project was?
I was told on mine what to do. Yep.
Okay, so they told you like to do the stressed one? which
Yes.
is, that's why Professor Kerr says non-traditional. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Because I was kind of thrown in, and they were like, what do you mean you have to present? And I was like, well, in the manual, and at that point they were like, well, you choose. And I was under the impression, based off reviewing the manual, that it was going to be kind of given to us of what project they think would be suited, but that didn't happen for me either. So I was just curious how that worked.
Yeah. I'm assuming, Julie and Tamara, you were given a project, like directed to complete a specific project.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's usually how it goes, I think. So, all right. So, okay, I will make Lindsay a co-host. And Lindsay, then you can share your screen. And if you just go to the bottom, there's a little box with an arrow. If you click on that, you can share. Do you see it, Lindsay? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself, and you can take it over, Lindsay. You just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go, under control. Okay, well, my name is Lindsay Colsan, and I will be presenting my PPE experience, which took place at Hennepin County Medical Center, which was a large organization and community hospital that I was a little apprehensive, but it ended up turning out to be a great experience. Introducing a little bit more about myself, I have an extensive background in the medical field, having 15 plus years, primarily in pharmacy, but it has helped me to kind of, I would say I'm well-rounded in the fact that I've been in multiple settings, from clinical settings, operations, hospitals, long-term care, and then specialty units, which I truly have a passion for. It just always doesn't suit my schedule, but that was an experience that I gained. I'm currently certified as a tech. I was a specialty infusion tech, and I can't wait to graduate. I'm a member of the HEMA right now, and I intend to take the RHIA this, let's say, in the near few weeks. As far as my agenda and my overall experience there, I intended to keep a journal outside of what was required for us, just so I would be able to refresh and reflect back on everything I learned and reviewed and all the people we met, because it was a little overwhelming at first with all the responsibilities and the workflow. And overall, like I was just commenting on, I had to pick my own project. So at that point, they all kind of sat down at a management meeting and were like, well, you can let us know what you feel. And so after interviewing with a couple individuals on day 2 is when I fully decided what my project would be. HCMC is short for Hennepin County Medical Center. The facility is a level 1 trauma hospital, and it serves, a potential of 455 beds, but the census usually was around 300 when I was there. It's right in the heart of downtown, and it was super busy, and they were preparing for Super Bowl, and there was no parking, there was construction, there was any and everything that you could think, traffic. There was a lot of barriers, but at the same time, you can embrace it. I familiar being a city girl, so I was okay with it. I just knew to prepare. They offer a numerous amount of services, which I think is really beneficial in cultural. It's very diverse. They have a potential for a lot of growth within their organization. More than I thought, because actually this hospital has been labeled the free hospital for so many years, and kind of seeing the realm of how it works now, it's completely changed my opinion about the hospital, and it was a good experience. The HIM department is kind of offset of the hospital, and they have multiple buildings. I think there was 7 buildings, and so sometimes I was interviewing and walking through these tunnels and subways, and it was huge. But the professional building is most of, like, they call the money building, and it was on the 7th floor. Most of the HIM department, except the revenue cycle, was on the floor above. And I noticed between interviewing and just the meetings we conducted, I was between the 2 floors most of the 14 days I was there. Jessica Johnson is the director. She also, like Amanda was saying, she's new to the role. She was fresh 3 months into it, and she has a lot of experience. So she had kind of a focal point of what she was trying to do with the department. And so kind of throwing a student in the mix was a little bit challenging, in the fact that I had told Katie I didn't get to communicate with her very often. I kind of had to schedule myself in with her in between different time slots and meeting. On my org chart, as you can see here, it's hard to read some of the finer text, but most of the individuals I met here, the coding departments are split up in between professional billing and hospital billing, and it's kind of very segregated, but they work together all the time, and they kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And most of the coordinators, supervisors, and managers I was able to meet with on a daily basis, which was kind of nice, because some facilities are so disconnected with the rest of their staff members, where it becomes not a very positive team morale, and it's just, you do your job and we do our job, and somehow it correlates, where there was more of a connection, and I appreciated that about the organization. The content areas, the 16 areas that we were required to facilitate our journals and our daily activities, I was commenting how challenging that was kind of for me, trying to prepare myself to schedule with a secretary / assistant that was working from home as well. And then again, my mentor was not around that often or in meetings herself. So I kind of had to fit in with all these people. I did the best I could. I met wonderful professionals that I can't even tell you how fulfilling it was to hear their stories and to see how they all relate, and to see their impact on the HIM department was really, really more than I anticipated. So that was really fun to learn. A lot of them too, I asked for their job descriptions, so therefore I could see right away what their credentials are, what their goals were, what they had to meet to be in that position, their financial salary. I did research on that. So I kind of had, done my research and compared them all, and it was fun to do that as well. Like I said, I just put most of the individuals I met, I'd say my key point that I brought out was 3 things that I felt were really important that I gained from each individual and how it related to HIM. So I think that honestly really helped me to reflect back. we're so busy with our lives, and 3 months ago seems like forever ago now. So looking back at my notes and having those 3 key points of what they brought out, what I learned, really helped me to refresh, like, oh yeah, I just remember interviewing that. So that was, here's another slide again that I met with, I don't know, I know like Amanda was saying, she barely met a lot of people, and all of our individual experiences were different, but I was crammed in. It seemed like I had a lot of open time, but at the same time, I still feel like I didn't see enough. But it's in a huge organization like that, it's hard to cover all your bases. For the exploration component, this was my absolute favorite. I cannot even tell you how overjoyed I was to meet Joy, which kind of is fitting. Joy is Joy, because she's super positive. She's very eccentric. I mean, it's not your typical employee. So you have all these business professionals, and then here's Joy. She's kind of loud. She's free-spirited. Her office was dim lighting and eccentric, and she was super motivating and positive. And she actually played a dual role in the department. She is the manager of the inpatient coding, and also she was the training / CDI interpreter for like the bounce back in between HIM coding and how they correlate. And so her role is very pertinent there, and she's well respected, and she's a well-rounded individual. She's from New Orleans, so she was so fun, and she had an accent about her. And overall, I spent about I'd say a half a day with her on one encounter, and I think 2 hours on a different day. And she was just telling me how, what she had to do to obtain this position, and what she has to do to keep up with the trends and all the clinical documentation. And this is what formed me, or this is what transpired me to form my own project, so to speak. Her title and her position intrigued me to the point, and I saw some of the areas that needed improvement. So my project, which leads me to, is the impact of improving physician clinical documentation. The purpose of this project for me is because when I was meeting with a couple of individuals from the CDI and having this, extensive time with Joy, I saw where there was loopholes in the query process, in the coding, and where they weren't getting their stuff in a timely fashion, and then also the physicians weren't responding. And then, of course, that, as they say, the money building, that affected the overall revenue cycle as well. During the whole experience, I was telling the professor, and I had reached out to a couple of our classmates, and I think trying to cover all the content area and gain the experience was challenging, in the fact that you couldn't really embrace and enjoy every aspect of this. Is, I'm obtaining all the information I need, I'm meeting everyone I need, but then you have that stress of, asking the right questions. I had a minor hiccup with my mentor. She tried to pre-populate certain titles that corresponded to the content areas, and they were incorrect titles. So when I went to prepare myself and research to make sure I had everything covered as far as my organizational skills and just my overall plan of how I felt this experience should go, it was altered. So you just had to roll with the punches. I asked for everyone's patience, and when I almost embarrassed myself, you're sitting down with these professionals and you're like, tell me your title, and it has nothing to do with what I did my research on. I was like, oh my goodness, Jessica. But it worked out, and I was able to complete all the tasks we needed to, and overall it was a great experience. The methodologies I used, they kind of varied. Again, Sherry Wachta and Joy Stripling were the two people that correspond with the CDI program. So they were basically my main reference points. They gave me access to certain queries, documentation that I was able to research. They referenced me to the policies and procedures that the overall department has and that each individual role played, and then how those mechanisms affected the physicians. And then they have an actual workflow queue that I could see the physician, the time, and how their response was, and basically using all these resources and researching on the HCMC network is how I populated most of my results. Which brings me to my results, which was kind of challenging. When you're just making an improvement process plan, you don't really have key like, 2 + 2 is 4. It's more of a spectrum. So there's a range for what needs to be involved. It was more of a percentage, more of a timeline, more of a process in capturing rates and being able to communicate between it. I think some of the areas that I got to sit in meetings between the CDI, nursing, coding, and then the physician team, I noticed the kind of hierarchy and the difference between, well, I'm a physician and I don't have to do that. And that was challenging in the fact where I was like, wow. And it's different because a lot of individuals in the HIM department are labeled the money team. So I noticed sitting back that they are demand and asking of the physicians, but they're not really asking them. They're kind of telling them what they need to do, what they need to improve, how they need to respond. And it's more of in a derogatory way rather than coming at them and communicating in a different fashion where that they might get a little different feedback. They might get involved a little more. So I learned quickly that there was champion physicians that basically spoke on behalf of a physician team, and they were able to capture more of the findings and be able to communicate back and forth between the two teams to get the results they needed. So overall, I felt at times like, well, this is not the facts and results and the true definition of what I was looking for. But again, this was an improvement plan. So there is no key, timeline or key facts except the regulations and protocols that you have to follow. As far as the references go for my project, there was just a lot of CDI. I did a lot of research myself. I found different software programs that could eliminate some of the interpretations and some of the issues that they were having. There was documentation improvement plans that you could kind of reference off of and guidelines. And then again, most of my research came from the two individuals I met with and then the HCMC database. As far as the overall PPE experience, like I touched on, it was just meeting everyone, trying to make sure I was in the right place at the right time. I only had one timely fashion where I showed up 5 minutes late because I thought I was in the blue building and I was in the orange building and I had to run and I got lost and the security guard took me the wrong way. But I mean, just little stuff like that. Like I said, the only thing constant in life is change. So you just gotta be able to move on and prioritize. And I think if I would have one suggestion or change that was challenging was just to communicate more with my mentor. Like I said, I think I had all of maybe 2.5 hours tops, like the entire experience, because she was new to her role. She's constantly meeting and introducing people and in meetings, and I never got to see her. Lessons learned. Let's see. There's always a lesson to learn. I would suggest more room to write in the manual. Not that the manual's big enough already. I love it, but more space to write notes when you're, going in and you're trying to prepare. I was constantly flipping through my own notebook, cross-referencing back, where if you just had like an own page that was just for that person alone, you could almost have a top like for a title, almost like the peer review, like a form, so to speak, for each content area, I think would be helpful. So I'm not just looking, because in a way, I was trying to correlate who I'm seeing, what time, and flipping through the manual and flipping back and going, trying to find space to write. And I think at times it could look very unprofessional. So just having that. And then having maybe possibly having everything scheduled beforehand, or at least, 75% of your content areas, because when you're trying to scramble to meet everyone and hoping, and I get it, it's not feasible for their schedules, but if you do know, like we knew it was November 7th, or through 16th or whatever it was, then you can pre-plan and populate these areas for your staff, and then as well for the student in the facility. So that would just be my lesson learned and experience behind that. My overall project conclusion, I think in a way I was challenged myself with, like I said, I'm more of a black or white person. I'm not a gray person, and my project kind of leaves them with that gray area. There is room for improvement everywhere, which is, in my opinion, a challenge in itself. And, you just have to be able to communicate and make improvement processes, implement different plans, be willing to spend money. That was part of which I was talking about. I suggested CDI software on different programs that measure the metrics differently, and having a different outlook on how we can interpret all these documents and get them done and prioritized accordingly. So then the DRGs get paid and everything runs smoothly. So I think overall their facility is currently working on a plan, and I don't know if you guys, I presented in front of the whole management team, but I had like a 20-page paper with, if anyone would like to see it, I didn't know if I should submit it, but I have it. It's a huge report that breaks down everything I researched, everything I suggested, how I find my clinical findings to everything. It's just so much to put into slides. But I have it if you're interested. Major ideas I had was, again, having a daily log and then being able to have those key points, I think was critical for me. I don't know if it works for everyone, but I'm very visual and I kind of go back and I read it. There was a couple times I did ask permission, but when I was interviewing basically Joy for the exploration, because there are so many components, I just pressed record on my computer and I have it, the whole thing. So I was able to go back and reflect on exactly what she said. And I think that really helped me. Try not to be stressed, be confident. I feel for someone who, isn't a city girl and has that stress of, parking and challenging, or someone who, didn't know that their mentor's in a different role, and you just got to be flexible and have a good attitude about it and be adaptable. But I think communication is the key. We all have a story to tell. It's just who wants to hear it. And my overall references, just for a couple photos and stuff, are mostly from HCMC. And that's it. Do you guys have any questions for me? Or, like I said, if you want to see my project, I can always send that over too.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. I guess my first question really is in terms of the culture of the department. Do you see, could you see yourself working in that type of a organization or that department, or?
I can, yeah. And I actually was really flattered. The second day I came, they have a morning meeting huddle, and the three of the managers of the 8 that sat in every day, they thought I was a new hire. So they thought I was a new manager. So I was really flattered by that, because they just said you have a certain poise and confidence about you, and I'm a working professional and I have a lot of medical knowledge. So it's not something completely new to me, but the direction in which I'm trying to. So yeah, I felt like I fit in great. I felt a little more prevalent in a work environment, as where sometimes you have 15 years in one spot and you're just kind of, you get overlooked at times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Did you enjoy the project?
I did. The project, like I said, I had to create myself. So being able to, from front end to back end, complete all of it and be able to present it to them, it was rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So did they give you like an option? I think, if I remember right, was it an option of 2 projects, or how did you?
No, that's why it was just, oh, you have to do a project. And I said, yeah, I have to present at the end. And they were like,
Okay.
oh, well, you just tell me what you want to do. I'm like, well, I actually think you have to kind of tell me what you'd like me to do a project on. And she goes, oh, well, I don't mind. Just decide by Wednesday. So the first week by Wednesday is after I had met Joy and we decided. So I was like, okay, I'll do that.
Good. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Lindsay? Okay.
No, I don't.
All right. All right. Well, very good job, Lindsay. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for your presentations tonight. It was really interesting, and overall, I think the end result was positive for all of you, and I enjoyed learning about your experiences. So, all right. So if you guys could just turn in your evaluations. You guys are, gosh, we only have a week left of class, so this is just going super fast well, I don't know if it feels fast for you guys, but it feels fast for me. So all right. Well, I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.